Well, it's the second working day of the week, but it's one, two, three, four, a couple of days in the ongoing Africa Cup of Nations. You're welcome to AFCON Today, which is live on your superstation Joy 99.7 FM here on Joy News and Joy Prime as well. And we'd like to say a very big welcome to all of our friends who are joining us from different places around the world as we bring you the analysis and the backstories from the ongoing Africa Cup of Nations in Côte d'Ivoire. Well, today we'll be focusing on the defending champions, Senegal, because they've started on a blistering note. There's a young man who's 20 and is called Lamin Kamar. He has recorded the first brace of the tournament, but there's a story to him as well. Is he going to be the big discovery from here? Well, there are others who probably will disagree because they see other bigger talents around. Well, all of these will be the subject of analysis here. Also, later today, we'll be taking a look at the Black Stars and the Kudus equation. Is the Ghana star man available and ready to play on Thursday? We'll be taking a look at that as well. Added to all of that, we'll be throwing the focus on Burkina Faso and the like and Mali, who are all going to be in action later this afternoon. The action is all here on AFCON Today. My name is Nathaniel Atto. I'm ably backed by the rest of the Joy Sports team. And of course, here with me today are the man, Coach Kwejo Eje Jima, better known as Passionate Man, and also the newest kid on the block. That's the description you have to give him. Ayew Tamaklo. There's a poster in town and in your spaces which has him, doing a punch into the air. But you look at his figure and you're realizing he could function well as a super bantamweight boxer. We'll talk about that later on. But welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us on Joy Prime, on Joy News, and on Joy 99.7 FM. For all of our listeners on Joy 99.7 FM, do remember that between now and the end of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, Ignition will take a rest, and the business news around this time will also take a rest. What will be taking your time will be the super expert analysis that will be coming on the back of those wonderful goals that are scored, those controversial, VAR moments, and also the big moments in the stand and the backstories as well. So welcome to the show. We'll get down to the conversations on Kudus, on Senegal and Lamin Kamar, and everyone else we're expecting this afternoon in a few moments. This is the show. It's AFCON Today. You stay with us. Well, I know you're really itching and looking forward to the conversations. Well, take it easy, relax, and whether it's in your seat or you're listening and watching from a device, well, you're welcome. Thank you for staying with us on Joy 99.7 FM, on Joy News, and on Joy Prime. All right, gentlemen, good to see you again. And let's begin with Ghanaian interests. The Kudus subject is still on, and the good, refreshing news is that he is likely to feature. He is fit. He's done a full training session with the Black Stars. Let me begin with you, Ayew. From what you know of how these things go, are you satisfied in this information that is coming out, or you still have your doubts?
It is good to have every good player available for the Black Stars in a situation like this. But given the context of Kudus Mohammed, I wonder if it would be a wise decision to even play him at all. He would perhaps be a wild card that you would want to keep, or an element of surprise that you want to throw in when you really need it, because I suspect there is a significant possibility of an aggravation here. And for me, the problems we have go deeper than far beyond Kudus Mohammed. He's a fantastic talent. He significantly changes the dynamics as far as the possibilities of goal scoring and match winning are concerned. But there are structural issues. And the question I asked myself when I listened to Henry on PM Express was, looking back to that performance against Cape Verde, which of those structural issues does Kudus solve? So perhaps he converts that Yeboah chance that he missed. He perhaps takes away some of the pressure away from the center forward. But in terms of the build-up, so Dennis Odoi said something that for me was quite instructive. He said there were too many gaps between the lines. And if you look at the gulf, the space between the midfield, and then the front two that were pressing, and then the wide players that were supporting them, it was criminal. What we did on Sunday didn't look coached. And so there are deeper issues that I think Chris Hughton has got to take charge of, because at this moment, the Black Stars look badly coached. And I fear having Kudus Mohammed may not be enough on
And
Thursday.
that also attracted a very, 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 very unfortunate scene at the team's hotel with the fan who wanted to assault Coach Chris Hughton. Very, very a shameful act.
Well, no, it was quite unfortunate. But we'll have to look back to the game because in the end, fans are going to be fans. And they love the game of football. So as long as the team loses, obviously you're going to have these moments happen in the game. But back to the game again, I just think tactically we got it wrong, because that two holding we played in that game, because, football is always variation of tactics, and for me, I just think that the way he shuffled the pack in that particular game wasn't necessary. He should have started Inaki Williams, should have played the Newhamers, should have played our best 11. And for me, that should have been it, because it's the first game of the tournament. We needed that 3 points for, confidently play. Even without Kudus, I just think Ghana should have beaten Cape Verde. Now, check the lines, yeah? How we received the ball in between the lines. It was very, very appalling. We couldn't even break the lines. We hardly struggled to keep the ball for 2 minutes or a minute and a half. So how then do you create chances? How then do you distribute and, and open play? It's very difficult to really go through the lines when there's nobody to receive the ball in between the lines. And I just thought, in other words, like I've always said about Jordan, for me, when you play him wide, he's a big disservice because he doesn't actually cross enough. So for me, if you want to go with him in attack, he should be in the box. Besides, also, Pencil was doing well, but then there wasn't no target man. It took Semenyo to come wide to cross the ball that got that Shamiru goal that was disallowed. So that should tell you that we were struggling to break in between the lines or any player to receive the ball in between the lines. That was going to be our strength. Like I said the other day, the goals of the Black Stars are going to come from the midfield. That's our strongest side of our game. But however, we need to open up play so that we'll be able to create more chances.
And so you'd agree with Ayew in bringing in a Kudus, for instance, at a certain point in the game and not necessarily making him, play the full 90 minutes because of the risk element?
I just think the risk element is so high because, this is hamstring, Hamstring takes you averagely about 6 weeks to 2 months to fully recover. So I just think at this moment, we need Kudus. Is he going to take injections? Is he going to take pills to play for the Black Stars? At some point, he should definitely come on because, Egypt is going to be another game. We have to understand that. We have to operate our best side, especially with this particular team and our approach, in this first leg. And I just think that two holding midfield we played. Look, Egypt would normally play a 4-3-3, no matter how much they set up. If they go with 4-4-2, they will attack 4-3-3. That's how the Egyptians play. So I wouldn't get it if the manager plays two holding midfielders. I wouldn't get it because that would be unnecessary. So we have to be, evaluate our tactics against Egypt. So Kudus in that game at some point, 20 minutes, half an hour, won't be bad. That can create some magic for the team.
Oh, that must be very, very tough for the player indeed. I'm very sure that at this time, he also was very, very willing to play for the Black Stars and also put his name there in the record books, just like Lamin Kamar, who we'll be talking about later on.
Yeah, he will. But the curious situation is that he came into camp with a physio from West Ham, whose instructions, I believe, from Eastland will be make sure everything they do is by the book. If there's a 5% chance of aggravating that injury, don't risk it. And the reality is this. He is not there to serve Ghana's interest. He's there to protect the assets of West Ham United, that is Mohammed Kudus. And so I will not be surprised if there is a conflict in terms of how they go about this as to, if you ask Dr. Prince Pambo, if there's a 70% chance of Kudus playing this game and giving Ghana even 40%, he'll take it. But that may not represent the same value of risk after an assessment from whoever the West Ham physio is, because his instruction is make sure Kudus returns safely. And so it is not just down to Kudus Mohammed to decide and say that I want to play. If he decides to veto whatever the counsel or the advice from the West Ham physio medic is concerned, he could be in trouble here, because that will be a purely professional advice that he will be given. And as I've said, whatever he will be suggesting to Kudus will not just be a suggestion. He will be relaying the information from West Ham United and perhaps David Moyes. So I think Ghanaians, we need to be open-minded to that fact and understand that this is beyond Kudus' own interest and then wishes, as unfortunate as it appears.
Well, tough situations indeed. A couple of days ago, when I was having a conversation with legend Laie Kingston, we spoke about his injury situation in 2008, which was a very big deal. He came in, however, in the quarterfinal against Nigeria and helped to create those moments of magic. Now, you're looking at this situation as well and seeing who the most worthy replacement will be at this time in that number 10 description or that number 10 role.
When you look at this team now, I just think that Andre Ayew in that position, could be the ideal replacement, because of his endeavour for getting to the box, and he's always had that, that taste to score goals, and he's a very great motivator as well. So on the pitch, Andre Ayew for that game, his experience will come forward as well. Very important against a game like Egypt. That's very necessary.
Okay, now there are those who have spoken about Andre Ayew's, pace and how it has slowed down considerably. In certain situations, you definitely will not look at a pace issue, especially because you have a legend in Zinedine Zidane, who did not necessarily do too much in terms of fast-paced running, but played a game that has put his name in the history books. What would you also suggest regarding Andre Ayew? We take him into the game on Thursday and we make him start so that, there's all of those elements that he brings into the game?
Andre should be your last resort.
Okay.
I don't see which of the problems in this team that Andre solves. You expect Egypt to play high-octane football. You expect them to be very dynamic in the football that they play. And the way we set up and the players that we choose should reflect a certain appreciation of the problems of the day and the unique skill sets, and even respect them enough to put in players who are up to the task. Because the question I was asking myself is this. One of the issues we had with Ransford Yeboah was the fact that he had too much space to cover, right? Already, this team looks structurally dysfunctional. Throwing an Andre Ayew, who has had, until this AFCON, 31 minutes in the last 6 months, you're asking for too much. And I think that, look, the reality of our problem is that we need to be bold and take some decisions. Check Koyate, big player in Senegal, they've dropped him, right? You're looking around other national teams who have similarly big characters but have been dropped. And so, for me, there should not be a question of whether or not Andre has to play. Look, even on Andre's best day, what we lacked on Sunday in the final third was perhaps a bit of creative ability and a bit more directness. Andre doesn't have that. At best, he's a finisher. So perhaps in the last 10 minutes or in the final 5 minutes when you're chasing a goal, you want to throw him on. But even beyond the personalities, for me, what's important is the approach. On Sunday, we completed 12 crosses. Now, we played against a team that had conceded 7 goals from crosses during qualifying. That approach did not reflect an appreciation of the problems that Cape Verde have got and the conditions that can prove problematic to them. My expectation would be ditch this whole idea of breaking the lines and being excessively fixated with the passing game. Go direct and look at how you can create the chances, because the reality is this. We don't have the midfielders to control the game. We don't have the midfielders to find the extra space. What we have are players who can wreak havoc out wide. We saw what Nyama did. When Semenyo moved out wide, he was able to do that. Joseph Paintel as well has proven that he's got the quality. That is what we have to do. And I don't think this is the time to coach the team out of its old habits. We had a year to do that. Unfortunately, Chris Hughton couldn't do that. This is the time to coach smart if we are to get anything out of this game.
Well, let's do some more on Ghana versus Egypt on tomorrow's edition of the show. But thank you very much for staying with us here on the Joy News channel, on Joy Prime, and also on Joy 99.7 FM. Let's now take a look at what happened yesterday. Senegal came in real strong, and they stamped the authority and made the biggest statement yet about their intentions to do a double, just like Egypt did between 2008 in Ghana and 2010 in Angola. And also, the 2010 hosts Angola, they held Algeria to a 1-1 draw. And then Cameroon also played out a 1-1 draw with Guinea. Look, I don't know, but these disallowed goals, some of them are so, oh my goodness. And this is where, on a light note, you'd want to roll back to Sepp Blatter's days and say, look, we don't want no VAR business here.
Well, it's unfortunate that we've seen a couple of those. Ghana were victims of that, but generally, I think the officiating has been quite good. Some of the best stories for me are the things that give hope to African football, and I know we'll get to that, Lamin Kamar and all of those, because you're looking at the next generation of these talents and where they are coming from. And I think in those stories, you also see lessons for the Black Stars of Ghana about what we need to do. Mauritania, they are coming into the tournament with a fantastic story about what they are doing with the FIFA Forward project. Whatever we say about Lamin Kamar, Papa Gueye, products from Generation Foot, the Ambaz Academy, concept developed by some people who do not have two heads, one head, just like we Ghanaians have got. So I think it overall has been a very beautiful tournament with lessons all over. And for me, even as we enjoy the goals and the players and the stories that follow, it's important that the people who run football in Ghana look at what they are doing right and how we can replicate some of these modules in Ghana, because it is unpardonable that a country like Mauritania can build a whole stadium from FIFA Forward projects money, and then we cannot point to what we've used excess of $80 million for.
Well, these are all conversations for another day, but these are the moments from that game. Massive control of the game in all departments, and the goals were also world class.
They were. And look, that control stems from having superior technical ability. And earlier, I mentioned the academies that are producing these players for Senegal. So in the year that Senegal won the AFCON in 2021, you had 8 players from Generation Foot and the Amba Academy, 4 from each. So Patrick Vieira's the Amba Academy producing 4 of those players, and then Generation Foot producing for the national team. The young man we're talking about today is a product from the Generation Foot Academy. They've got about 5 of them in the Senegal team. Papa Gueye is also from that academy. Sadio Mane, Ismail Assar, Pape Matassa. What it gives you, or what it has given Senegal, is that ability to influence the development of that talent at a very early age, even before they travel abroad. And so if they notice that in this moment they are deficient in central midfield quality, they ensure that the academies are producing those players. They've got infrastructure in place already, and now we're seeing high-quality midfielders who are playing for Tottenham Hotspur. The young man, Lamin, we are now seeing him at Metz in the French league. He's just 20 years of age. And so that's a beautiful story for Senegal. And you look at what they are doing, and it's the reason why you cannot discount them and say that they're probably going to suffer the same fate as previous holders of the African Cup of Nations, because there is a method to the madness that we're seeing in the last 6 years.
A method to the madness indeed. And Lamin Kamar's story is so interesting in the fact that when he landed at Metz, he just needed his second appearance to establish his place. And he scored what we refer to in local parlance as center to goal, 68 meters, and it's just amazing. The youngster is, what we see here is not such a big surprise. At the under-20 level as well, he emerged the overall best player for the African under-20 championship.
Yeah, so basically what Senegal has done now, is they've kind of carved, looked at the players and the stature of the players, the quality of the players, and they built a team around these players. So this is the most important thing. Football has to be developed based on the qualities. And, in Europe, it's always like that. And so with Senegal, that's what they found doing. They found just the quality of what they represent as a country and what they bring on the table. And so all the players, they bring a lot of that energy, that force, that drive. You look at all these players coming out of the academies in Senegal, and you can tell there's a kind of similarities across Europe. The youngsters that are coming through from the academies, those in Europe, all of them. People said that there was a point that people thought, Sadio Mane wasn't even a typical main striker because of the way the Senegalese academies were producing players. And for me, I just think that they're doing something that's very remarkable, that a lot of African countries, should, kind of look back and see what they're doing. Because the talent is there. What was needed was that they needed a structure, and then they're following this pattern, and the players are just coming through.
Well, so this is the story so far. The man Lamin Kamar has just made an early statement. If you're looking for a statement, and of course the champions have also made a statement. If you're looking for one, as regards who will eventually emerge as one of the two who will vie for the ultimate title this term. Well, on that note, I welcome our man with the statistics, Karim, to help us out to get to know a few more, our potential stars of this tournament. How you doing, Karim? Good to see you.
Good to be here again.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there listening to Ayew.
Oh, yeah?
Talking about the story of Lamin Kamar.
Yeah.
This will better let us understand his story really well. The British statesman, Winston Churchill, he says that we shape our buildings and thereafter the buildings shape us. What does that mean? The structures that Senegal that have given this young man, 20 years old, the room to have those basics that would allow him to go into meds. And this season, he has played 15 games for them. When those structures are there and he has the basics, not like when we transferred Abdul Fattah Issahaku to Sporting CP, and he couldn't fit in. He had to go on loan to Leicester and now trying to build himself. He's not here because he's trying to secure his club career. He was, in 2021, he was the best player at the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. Just this last year, Lamin Kamar was the best player at the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. It means that Abdul Fattah Issahaku could have been doing what Lamin is doing, but because he lacked the basics, he couldn't excel at Sporting and had to now be fighting for his future at Leicester. Now, let's look at the general statistics of the game first before we come to Lamin Kamar. Let's look at possession first. 66% possession for Senegal and 34% for the Gambia. This is not surprising, looking at the pedigree of Senegal as the defending champions and the kind of football they are playing. But if you also look at the Gambia, they just played their 6th match at the Africa Cup of Nations yesterday. And in all those 6 games, it was only in their round of 16 games in their first tournament in 2021 that they've had about 49% of possession. It means that they don't thrive on dominating the ball. What they thrive on is sitting back, countering, absorbing the pressure, and scoring on the break. Let's look at the total number of shots. The Senegal had attempted a total of 12 shots in that game, and then 10 for the Gambia.
So that just tells us that if Senegal, with this amount of possession, were able to do 12 total shots, and the Gambia did 10, anybody who will be playing the Gambia should be wary of that these guys may be trying long ranges and the like.
Of course,
it could cause problems.
All these shots you are seeing for both Senegal and the Gambia, these are just quantities. Okay. They are not clear
real chances.
Yes,
okay.
They are not real chances, clear-cut opportunities that you don't need to do a lot of work to convert. That's why this is very important. Expected goals in that game. Senegal, they scored 3 goals, and the expected number of goals they accumulated in that game is 1.38. It means that in those 12 chances, none of them had more than 50% chance of being a goal. But because of the technical acumen of players like Lamin Kamar, converted it. His first goal he scored, if for the average player, there was 18% chance that would have been a goal. And the second one he scored, there was 7% chance that would have been a goal for any average player. But because of the kind of grooming he's gone through, the kind of awareness he has in his game, he didn't even need to raise his head to see where the post is to get away the shot. When the players were, Ndiaye was on the ball, coming into the box, he didn't follow them to also go inside the box. He was withdrawing, knowing that where he is around the D, he knows what he can do. When the ball came, he didn't need to raise his head. He just put his laces through it and inside. Those are goals you see veterans like Thomas Partey scoring. And 20 years old, he's scoring this kind of goals. You can just imagine what the future holds for him. Let's look at his game personally. He scored 2 goals out of nothing. He attempted 2 shots in that game, and those 2 shots accumulated 0.26 expected goals. It means that even if you're comparing the quality of those chances he scored in that game, there was 26% chance that he would score 1 goal, and he scored twice. As a central attacker midfielder, he also completed 45 of the 51 passes he attempted, and that is a very high 88% passing accuracy. Created 3 chances in that game, one being a very big chance. So this is the story of the game between the Gambia and Senegal statistically.
Well, Karim, thank you so much. Very, very interesting thoughts. And clearly, we can see this young man walking gradually to stadium. And trust me, the summer transfer window will be interesting.
It will be. It will be. But Karim mentioned something that broke my heart. The dichotomy between the trajectory of the young talents that leave the shores of Ghana and the talents that leave Senegal. When our players go to places similar to where he found himself, they go to Liefering, Wolfsberger, sometimes in the second division of Austria and those places, because the talent is there, but the fundamentals don't exist. And we will always go back to what the 2 coaches at FC Zurich of Efrie Banye and then Abdul Fattah at Sports and Lisbon said the talent is not in doubt, but the basics in their game technically are non-existent. And so they would have to be re-educated. But we're seeing where this young man came from and how he's moved straight into France. We saw Sadio Mane, RB Leipzig, in the modern era, perhaps the most futuristic and the most credible football academy that we have seen in the last 10 or 15 years. But their players are going there and they are taken to life as ducks would to water. Connections won't do that for you. Pure technical ability will do that. And that's where I think Ghana's focus has got to go. Because look, the game is evolving. People are putting their monies where their mouths are. It's not sloganeering. I think 3 months ago, there was a story on my Joe Online about Mauritania's evolution into football and the frame projects that they were doing. They are building a new stadium from the FIFA Forward project. They have built a new technical center in the city center of Mauritania. Now, beyond that technical center, they've got a medical center close to it. They've got new training pitches. 3 of them are synthetic pitches that they have got. And then they've got an academy as well. Actionable or things, tangible things that you can point to that have got a direct influence on the development of football and the talents they are producing. What is the benefit of that? They have now made the AFCON 3 times.
You know, these are conversations we need to stretch beyond here because there are other aspects of the conversation on especially, football academies, the database that we have at the FA, what the criteria is and what the compliance issues are and who is in charge of compliance, whether it's even being adhered to and all of that. These are all major conversations we're going to have. But Karim, thank you so much. Thank you. Now let's get ourselves into the Burkina Faso business for later this afternoon. Burkina Faso, Mali, and the like are all in action. We'll be doing that very, very shortly. But you're still here on AFCON Today, and it's live on Joy Prime here, and on Joy News as well, and on Joy 99.7 FM. A message, and we continue with the analysis right here. All right, thank you very much for staying with us on AFCON Today here on Joy News, on Joy Prime, and Joy 99.7 FM. Gentlemen, Cameroon also came to the party. They had Guinea, hold them to a very entertaining game. Your thoughts?
Well, Cameroon, in the last few years, they've been trying to rebuild as well. Got some few bright talents there, but not too many. But at the moment, you can tell Cameroon is struggling, because of what the country holds over the years and the footballing history backing them. But clearly, they're off the pace at the moment. But they still got some brilliant talent there. And you can just tell that the way they approach even the tournament, the start of the game, watching them yesterday, you could tell there's a missing piece in the game. The way they control the game, they fumbled a bit here and there. The final pass, they couldn't even find the final pass at some point as well. The long Cameroonian, volleys that we knew, we weren't getting them anymore, and they weren't playing a bit direct. Sometimes Cameroon could play direct in the peak of the powers, but yesterday I saw a Cameroon that struggled to control the game. Maybe an Onana factor could also be one of the things, and looking at Onana, what he finally ditched them to stay at Man United because obviously, he's losing his spot in Man United now, and he thought perhaps if he did come to the Lions, he probably would have lost his spot. So I think Cameroon, let's see what the next game will be. If they build up, then we can probably talk more about them. But at the moment, they look a bit shy of themselves.
Onana.
You know, the question I've asked myself after Cameroon won the AFCON in 2017 was whether or not they backed the wrong tree in Fabrice Ondoa, and whether or not after hiring Rigobert Song, they backed the wrong tree when, especially after the World Cup. Now, on Monday, I said that for me, and it still is inexplicable, that a country that has had as many greats as far as goalkeepers are concerned as Cameroon have had are tolerating this much disrespect from Andre Onana. For me, the moment he made his choice and decided to retire, there was no going back. Excuse my language, the national team is not your living room where you walk in and out anytime.
But actually, we've had major situations. I mean, when you look at here in Ghana as well. I mean, I remember, you know, the Jan brothers from 2008. You know, Andre Ayew getting a call from the president to sit with him at the Jubilee House to rescind his decision. I mean, these things have happened.
I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong. And I think it creates a scenario where players feel...
Lionel Messi, you know, leaving Argentina temporarily.
Look, I think that to every rule there's going to be an exception. Messi is perhaps, he gets a pass. Whatever the crime is, he will get a pass because of how good he is. But I don't think that, especially in the case of Andre Ayew, when you misbehave and the coach cracks the whip, you decide to retire. I don't think a president has to come and beg you to come back. I don't think so. You're not more important than the country. I don't think that has to happen. And here's the thing. Cameroon showed faith in Fabrice Ondoa in 2017. At that time, he was in a situation where, had he been a Ghanaian, we probably would have said, you know what, this makes no sense. We probably would have suspected something fishy, because at the time, he had just signed for gymnastics from Barcelona. He didn't make the grade at gymnastics, so they sent him out on loan to Mathamut, a lower tier side in Spain. He doesn't make the grade there at the B team of that lower tier side. He gets shipped out to Sevilla B. He kept the post on 2 occasions, and then that was in 2016, the 2016-17 season. And then in the year that they won the AFCON, he kept the post on 3 occasions. So in a 3-year period, Fabrice Ondoa kept the post for less than 10 games in 3 years. Yet, Cameroon showed faith in him and decided that he's our guy for the AFCON. And he repaid that faith. What perhaps they did not do right was not take an interest in his progress, because the basics, the fundamentals in the game that are still wrong, that were wrong 6 years ago, are still there. And so if you look at the goal that he conceded, you would have expected that he would have calculated that situation much better. And so, look, for me, it's not as if Fabrice Ondoa became bad overnight. He's never been a goalkeeper who's kept the sticks anywhere. He's always been a bench warmer. I don't know what is different from this situation. However, my guess is this. The coach himself does not have authority because he's not coaching the team to play well. And when he's not doing a good job of it, it takes away his ability to be firm in that situation and say, it is my way or the highway. The game that they played the last time out, I was watching that game, and it was Route 1 football. They didn't know how to break down Guinea, and so 36 crosses. The Catholic Church will be proud.
Coach, you've seen this scenario, and once again, the real question is, so what? He goes away. Does it affect Cameroon in any way?
It does affect Cameroon a lot. I heard my brother talk about the faith they paid in the other goalkeeper. But the truth is, when Onana comes to Cameroon, he's a different player. You know, he's a different goalkeeper, because the Premiership is different. The pace of the Premiership, the way teams are structured, and the rhythm that's in the Premiership is different from African football. And that has to be said. And so when Onana comes to Cameroon, you know, he brings a lot of confidence, and the way the African football is. I've seen him in Cameroon even before he went on retirement, you know, and he's a different goalkeeper. He's just struggling with the pace of the Premiership because he was signed to, you know, play from the back. And Man United is struggling, so he can't play from the back. The defense is at sea, so he can't play from the back. So the structure at United is completely opposite to the structure at Cameroon.
Okay, so for you, we need an Onana.
Onana, if you had come
Need
to
a
Cameroon,
dose of Onana.
absolutely.
Well, let's quickly take a look at Algeria versus Angola. Another game that brought quite some amount of entertainment, of course, added to the stories as well. The 2010 hosts coming up against the 2021 winners.
Very disappointing. And I think in this match, if you look at the 3 games prior and the dynamics of those games, you get to see at this AFCON, you have to work for every point that you get. Algeria simply could not win this match because there was no variety to their play. Very direct. They knew they had a very good finisher in Baghdad Boneja, and so they will try to feed him as much as possible and then find the former Manchester City player in Riyad Mahrez. But I thought if they had a thinker in that team who could take the steam out of the game and allow the team to breathe, just to control the tempo of the game, because I thought this was too much of a contest. And against teams like Angola, they may not have the quality that Algeria had. But I felt that once you make the game that open, anything can happen. And we saw what happened to them when Angola eventually, they got into the game with that level. And I think that is one layer that they would need to add before the next game. A bit more variety to the attack and a bit more control in the center of the pitch. The reality is this: if you give these teams a chance, they will take it. We saw what Cape Verde did to Ghana. They didn't create too many chances before then. Mozambique didn't create too many chances against Egypt, although Egypt were a bit unlucky. But the lesson across in this tournament is that if you're a big boy, you have to be as dominant as possible. And the success of Ivory Coast and then Senegal have further emphasized that.
Kojo, this Algerian team, after their last win in the last 2 editions, they have not really made an impact on the AFCON.
Yep.
What is the factor that is accounting for all of this?
I think, comparatively, if you compare the last AFCON to this particular one, you could tell that the quality in Algeria has dropped a bit. The Mahrez and all these players that were there, the quality has dropped, and they failed to replace them. And that's where the problem is coming from. You had all these brilliant players coming from different top leagues in Europe with, high standard of football. And so that was a direct impact into any squad they were walking anyway. And so you watch them. I was watching them yesterday, and I thought they were still a good side. They were creating chances from open play. But the problem is they failed to control the games. With the likes of Mahrez and all these great players, and at that era, in the tip-top forms, they knew how to control games. They knew how to slow down the pace at some point. They knew how to play the 1-2s, yet run behind the box. You could tell everything they were doing in that game was just targeting the striker and just playing the long balls to the top man out there. And that, for me, if you come against top defenders, is going to always be a bit of a challenge when you have one man, especially playing that up front, and then on the pace. So another pacey team will always definitely going to be a back-to-back end.
They've not won any game since they lifted the trophy.
Wow, this kind of jinx has to be broken one way or the other, and that should bring some massive frustration to the fans, especially in Algeria. It's time to take a look at the fixtures for today. And Burkina Faso versus Mauritania, Tunisia versus Namibia, and South Africa going up against Mali. Let's begin with Mauritania going up against Burkina Faso. If you have, Ghanaian interest, then you'd want to remember the 2015 edition when Ghana were held to that game of toughness and of unimaginable pain. Burkina Faso have grown over the years.
They have, and I think they are one of the smartly run federations, or national teams, if you like, on the continent. As I said on Monday, they know what their strongest assets are. They know that if they've got Blati Toure, and then the guy who plays in the French third division, Gustavo Sangare in that midfield, it gives them a bit of solidity that allows Bertrand Traoré, his brother, and the rest of the team to go on there and then do what they're doing. And the good thing that Burkina Faso are enjoying from is that some of the greatest contributors to this team are players who were introduced into the national team very early. And so I remember Bertrand Traoré made his debut as early as 16. AFCON 2013, he was with the team. Charles Kabori, Aristide Bansi, and the pack of them. What that means is that he has grown. His peak has coincided with the natural growth of the team, which is why they have made the semis, about 4 times in the last 10 years as far as the AFCON is concerned. Hopefully, these things will begin to come together for them. And I think that they are one of the dark horses. There is another beautiful story to the team. Hubert Veloud, the head coach of the team, was also the manager of the Angolan team. He's had a story of being the nearly man, because we know what happened in 2010, the Cabinda tragedy, when disaster struck with the Togolese national team, who he was coaching at that time. They pulled out of the tournament. He didn't go. 2 years ago, he was the head coach of Sudan, qualified them for the AFCON. He got fired even before the tournament, started. And so this is the first time where he's getting the reward for his hard work, taking a team that he qualified to the tournament. And I simply cannot wait to see what he does with.
Kojo, does this make Burkina one of the favorites for this tournament?
Well, I think Burkina, they've always had that, that energy, that power, and they bring to every tournament. I think for me, the squad is still quite a young squad, averagely, if you check the squad. So they still have that power to drive them forward. I think what's been missing in their game the last few years is always been in the final third, when they finally have to, be clinical, especially in the most important games, the knockout stages and stuff like that. So if they can actually mount a little bit of hope, I think they can go far. But they're looking good as a team. They have everything, good right back, good centre backs, and in the midfield as well. They can actually play as a team, the Burkinabés.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the next fixture. And of course, later in the evening, would have Mali versus South Africa. Tunisia coming up against Namibia, who had their camp in Ghana ahead of the tournament.
Yeah. And they are making a habit of getting results against very good teams. So they drew with the Black Stars. Never mind, it was a friendly. They also beat Cameroon in the qualifiers. And it was that result that tipped the balance or moved the needle for them that helped them qualify. Otherwise, Kenya and co would have sneaked in behind them. But for me, the real story is Tunisia and how they always have a poor start to the AFCON. The last time they won the opening game at the tournament was 10 years ago, when they beat Algeria by 1-0. In their last 4 AFCON appearances, they have lost every single opening game that they have played. And they are another team that do not like drawing. They don't like sharing the spoil. So if you go back to the last 8 games that they've played at the tournament, they've won 3, they've lost 5. I expect that tradition to continue today only. I think they are going to get a win.
Well, Tunisia, they've had, quite a topsy-turvy 10 in the last 10 years. And are they probably a name you'd want to stick a neck out for in any way? Because obviously we're also looking at the surprise elements for this tournament. Kwejo?
I think possibly they could, because it's going to be an interesting game, because Tunisia and Namibia plays quite an open football. They like to attack on a fast pace as well. And so for me, that's going to be interesting. That's what Tunisia is going to do anyway. So both teams are always going to be back-to-back, end-to-end stuff. It's going to be more attacking. I expect Tunisia using the wide areas and getting some crosses in and stuff like that. So that will be the open play game. And so to be more about who's going to be more clinical in the end. But I think Tunisia, they have some quality of players now, especially a couple of young players coming through France and Germany that will, should carry the day.
A bit of a... So Andre will be following that game keenly, Andre Ayew. He knows that if Youssef Msakni scores, he pulls away from the rest of the pack in becoming the first player to score in 6 consecutive AFCONs. Yeah.
Well, those are all for the records. And I just saw that big painting of Andre Ayew putting his portrait on the wall of greats who have graced 8, AFCON tournaments. Yeah. Well, let's look at Mali versus South Africa, and we'll wrap up the show with the stories around Mali and South Africa. South Africa, once they're mentioned, bring a lot of fond memories and reminisce of that golden era in 1996, where you had the John Shoes Meshuels, the Mark Fishers, the Lucas Radebes, and all of that. And now it's a completely different picture we see here. You look at Mali as well, and in terms of the names that have brought inspiration to the different generations of footballers, sits a Freddie Kanouté, who at the time was in charge of the team as captain. And now the era has gone forward. Mali has become a very disciplinarian side to the Black Stars in some occasions. But generally, what kind of game are you expecting Mali to play against South Africa?
I think they will seek to impose themselves on the game. They are a team that, in many ways, like Senegal, are benefiting from a more structured youth football system in their country, even if it may not be one that is public or government driven, but more by the private sector. And if it reflects itself in the quality of young players that they are producing and where those players are playing. For example, Yves Bissouma. But for me, the real story is going to be South Africa, because Hugo Broos has committed the cardinal sin of coaching, which is to tell the supporters that they don't have a voice and to say that they are criticizing the team too much. And his job is to pick the team. When you do that, you better make sure that your performance and then the results back it up. And I think for South Africa, the only way to go back to Joburg with his head high is perhaps a semi-final berth. Because after talking so tough, if it is going to be just another group stage exit or round of 16 exits, he will be fired at the end of the tournament.
And South Africa sure need a lot in terms of work. And Ayew rightly mentioned it, that any single point you get in this tournament, you have to work your socks for. Now, South Africa, and getting to that stage he's talking about, how realistic is it looking on paper?
So, Nat, what's changed with South Africa over the years, compared to the days of the Sean Butlers and the Matt Fish and all these, to the new South African Bafana, is the difference is those players were playing in Europe. Majority of these boys were in Europe. And South Africa plays a high-pressing football. And that high-pressing football, those players, they were accustomed to that in Europe. But now these youngsters that are playing for the Bafana, most of them are playing for the Kaizer Chiefs and all those clubs in South Africa. So the quality, the standard of being able to play the way they want to play, to impose themselves on African teams in the tournaments, stuff like the AFCON, is becoming more difficult. Because if you have to play high pressing, you have to be very effective with the high pressing. You see them every game they play, they are always on the pace. Off their bikes, they're going. But when you meet a team like Mali, that can slow the game down, technically a very good side, that can, control games, accelerate, they've got power, they can actually score long volleys, create chances. The South African team will lose their pace, and that's where the problem is coming from. So I just think that technically, if there was another number 10 or a couple of players that can control games at some times or some point in the games, that could have been a very massive help. But I still don't see that. I see a South African, that's a team that's always on off their bikes and quick to go.
Well, it's time to look at it and start pushing the buttons in terms of what kind of scorelines we're looking for. At the end of all the talk, the big talk, or whatever you'd want to give in terms of descriptions, it's the goals and the goals, because the goals will make the difference. Now, let's get back to the fixtures now and start from the top and take a look at how realistic is looking in terms of the scorelines that they can generate. So if we were all pushed, to look at Group D, the Group D fixture, Burkina Faso versus Mauritania?
I think 1-1.
1-1, a draw?
Draw.
Okay. Ayew, Namibia, Tunisia?
2-1 Tunisia.
2-1 in favor of Tunisia.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mali, South Africa, Kweju?
1-0 Mali.
1-0 Mali?
1-0 Mali.
Okay, Bafana. They are not he's not your best friend at this time. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been wonderful sharing your company this afternoon. And we sure are going to be doing some more when we come back tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll be reading your comments as well. So, just be following all of the Joy Sports pages on, on social media, on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook as well. And we'll bring you the topics ahead of the time so that you can contribute to the show. So thanks to Karim, the philosophical Karim. Thanks to Ayew, the cool, calm, and collected Ayew. And of course, the coach with swag, Kweju Jima. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, 1 p.m. to bring you another AFCON Today. In the meantime, you stay well. Keep it here on Joy 99.7 FM, on Joy News, and on Joy Prime as well. My name is Nathaniel Atto, and I have love for sport.